After 42 years of growing nothing but watermelon, my Aunt Hester was really ready for a change. So when Uncle Dutch passed, she sold Dutch's melon patch in Illinois and bought herself a 2,000-acre ranch along the Colorado River just outside of LaGrange, Texas. Now, by Texas standards, 2,000 acres is no big deal. But that's enough land for grazing up to 1 million head of free-range chickens. That's what Aunt Hester planned to raise. Now, the ranchers in Texas have always opposed the grazing of anything but cattle on the Texas range. And well, never been one to run from a fight. First thing Aunt Hester did was put up a big sign, "Coming soon, the chicken ranch." And the next morning, not too surprisingly, she found her sign had been peppered with both barrels of a 12-gauge shotgun. What was surprising is where the opposition was coming from. See, a couple days later, she got a registered letter that said, "We love Dolly's movie, but you are not bringing back the chicken ranch." Well, it took a little bit of research, but she went down to the local library there in LaGrange, found out that the movie in question was The Best Little Whorehouse in Texas, starring Miss Dolly Parton. And in that movie, Dolly's place of business is known as the Chicken Ranch, because back during the Depression, they started accepting live chickens in exchange for services rendered and accumulated quite a flock. Well, it turns out that movie is basically true, except for all singing and dancing, of course. And the actual Chicken Ranch, the original, you guessed it, just outside of LaGrange, Texas. Well, Aunt Hester realized this was just all a big misunderstanding, so she put up another sign. Aunt Hester's Organic Free-Range Poultry Ranch. And that seemed to appease the church ladies. The cattle ranchers, they never were a problem. Now, you wouldn't know it just to look at us, but my family has a tendency to jump in with both feet before we have any idea what we're getting ourselves into. And well, there were a few surprises for Aunt Hester. For example, do you realize herding chickens on horseback does not work very well? Now, that was the Wranglers that were on horseback. Aunt Hester thought about trying the chickens on horseback, but you know, Amazon was all sold out of chicken saddles, so that wasn't even an opportunity. Well, in spite of this and a few other little things, the family was impressed at how fast Aunt Hester got the chicken ranch up and running, and how smoothly everything was going. Well, till the horny toads showed up. Now, horny toads are actually these pudgy little lizards that just look a lot like a toad. And I don't know where they came from, but millions and millions of horny toads converged on Aunt Hester's ranch. Well, sir, normally horny toads would not be a problem. But these horny toads were eating all the bugs and insects. They're such a vital part of the diet of free-range chickens. If something wasn't done about the horny toads, Aunt Hester was going to have to start importing foreign bugs, or she was going to lose her organic accreditation for her whole ranch. That's when she called in me and my cousin Dave. Now, Dave had this great idea of what we could do with the horny toads. But in talking to several people on our way down to Aunt Hester's, it became apparent that the demand for Texas fried horny toad was not going to be as great as Dave had anticipated, which pretty well put the kibosh on all his plans. Now, my idea was we could just rake up the horny toads, roll them into Dave's truck, haul them off to Arkansas, and let them be somebody else's problem. But then we found out that when a horny toad gets excited, they squirt blood out of their eyes. This gives a whole new meaning to bloodshot eyes. But it also meant we were going to get blood all over Dave's brand new truck. And Dave was having no part of that. So we fell back to plan C. Now, Dave is a self-taught wildlife expert. So Dave knew that coyotes eat horny toads. This is an all-natural solution. And all natural is good, right? So we got ourselves a live trap, and we trapped 20 coyotes from the surrounding area, and we turned them loose on Aunt Hester's ranch.
Oh, no.
Those horny toads went wild feasting on, those coyotes went wild feasting on horny toads. Well, I guess the word must have got out because inside of a week, there were better than 1,000 coyotes roaming around in Hester's Ranch. Ponytail problem solved, almost. Except for one minor little detail that David failed to take into consideration. There is only one thing a coyote likes better than horny toad. Chicken. Now, many times have been said of Dave and me that we're a couple of bottles short of a six-pack. And I'm not entirely sure that's always meant as a compliment either. But what I will say for Dave and me, when we get in over our heads, which happens more often than you might think, when we get in over our heads, we got sense enough to call for help. Now, it was a little bit embarrassing that we're the ones that brought the coyotes into this. So we called on our cousin Steve to help us out, thinking we'd kind of keep it in the family, kind of quiet like, you know. Well, Steve's a musician. Quite frankly, I think he was more interested in his music than he was in helping us out. He was just learning to play the bagpipes at the time. And before he would help us with the coyotes, he insisted we listen to how good he could play the bagpipes after only 9 months of intensive lessons. Did you ever have the privilege of listening to a pleasant melody played by an accomplished musician? Well, Steve wasn't there yet, by a long shot. But Dave and I did our darndest not to laugh out loud as we listened to the caterwauling coming out of those bagpipes. Before Steve got done with his first tune, he was joined by a chorus of howling, yelling, and whining coming from the coyotes thereabouts. Well, I don't know what it was, but I guess the squawking from the bagpipes was just too much for the coyotes since they've heard. Because the coyotes started coming down out of the hills, yelping in pain, before they ran off to parts unknown. Which was kind of what we were after. So we set Steve to marching all around the ranch, playing his bagpipes until he had cleared all the coyotes out of that part of the county. And you know, to this day, there are very few coyotes there in Fayette County, right around the Grange, Texas. Now, I realize it was just a freak accident that Steve was able to get rid of the coyotes. But when it came time to deal with the horny toads, Steve really came into his own. Now, Steve had showed up with this old book of music. And one of the songs in that book was the original tune played by the Pied Piper of Hamelin when he led all the rats out of town. Now, I had forgotten that as a teenager, Steve played saxophone in a rock and roll band. Randy and the Ramblers for any of you into rock and roll. Well, anyway, I don't know anything about music, but Steve said he needed to transpose the music from ragtime rat into horny toad horn. All I know is Steve still had it, and it worked. After just a few toots on his saxophone, not the bagpipes, thank goodness, those horny toads started scurrying out of their little hidey holes and running at Steve like a bomb at a rock concert. And as Steve took off down the road, those millions of horny toads followed right behind, just a zigging and a zagging in step to the music. Steve led him across the bridge to the other side of the Colorado River. And once all the horny toads were across the river, he switched from the saxophone to the bagpipes, and he scattered the multitudes far and wide, including one group of hillbilly horny toads that I think must have run all the way back to Arkansas. Well, before we left for home, Aunt Hester got another registered letter in the mail. This one was from Miss Dolly Parton herself. Dolly had heard about the letter the church ladies sent, and she was madder than a wet hen how bad those church ladies had treated my Aunt Hester for no good reason. She encouraged Aunt Hester to go ahead and call her place the Chicken Ranch like she had originally intended. And then she invited Aunt Hester to enter into a partnership with her so that together they might mass market Dolly Parton's own chicken and dumplings from the Chicken Ranch. Coming soon to a store near you.